I want to just rant for just a minute, specifically about Romantasy, because we've reached the halfway point in the year, and I have finished, I don't know what my Goodreads list is, but I have tried to read more than that, and there are so many books that I have DNF'd this year. Like, I haven't marked any of them as DNF on my Goodreads shelf, because, like, I don't know, I feel really icky about that as an author myself. So, to preface the rant that is about to happen, I am also an author of fantasy. I consider my fantasy more romantic fantasy, not romantasy, which is something that I want to rant about here. Because, first and foremost, I don't think everyone agrees on what romantasy is. Because, like, when it first started to become a term that people used, I thought romantasy was this magical place between fantasy romance and romantic fantasy. I thought it was like a happy medium between the two. Because the first several books that I read that were marketed as romantasy, that's what they felt like. Fourth Wing, it felt like that. It wasn't just a romance, it wasn't just a fantasy novel. You took the fantasy out, it fell apart. You took the romance out, it would fall apart. You needed both. You needed the plot and you needed the romance together. Okay, I started a cup of coffee and I walked around the table, so I'm a little more calm than I was before. But no, I've read, or I've tried to read, let's preface this correctly. I have tried to read so many books that are trying to fit into that romantasy category, and it's like no one can agree on what it means. No one can agree on what romantasy is. Is it romantic fantasy? Is it fantasy romance? Can it be either? Is it between them? And it's people on the internet, specifically threads, when I asked this, were very determined that it was fantasy romance. But the books that I'm reading that are being marketed as romantasy are not agreeing with that statement. And it's very irritating because I don't dislike fantasy romance. I don't hate it. I would prefer romantic fantasy, which, if you don't know the difference between the two, the when you have a series of like genres, right? The last genre in the list is the main genre. It's like the verb, and all the other subgenres are like adjectives, right? So if you had like a techno romance thriller, it would be in the thriller section, right? A fantasy with a little bit of romance, it's a fantasy first with a little bit of romance. It's a romantic fantasy. Fantasy romance is a romance first in a fantasy setting. And like I've even seen people on threads try to argue about that it doesn't make sense, and it's like it's not that is how publishing has always worked. I'm sorry it doesn't make sense to you. Learn the system. Like you can't make your genre whatever you think it should be and then get upset when people are like, this is not the genre that it is, because you're trying to change genre conventions and expectations, and it's just not working. Oh, and I'm just not frustrated. Well, I'm a little frustrated because I just keep running into these books that are being advertised as romantasy, either if it's people recommending the book, people putting the books into like a Goodreads list with a romantasy tag, whether it's the categories on Amazon or what have you. And I get into these books, and there's no telling how much romance or how much fantasy is going to be in these books. It's all over the place. I've encountered these romantasy books that they just read like these soap opera level melodramatic romances with like fantasy politics in the background, and that is a hard DNF for me. There has been several books that everyone is like, oh my gosh, this book is amazing, and I get in and I don't make it past the first chapter because it's just, I'm not gonna say the word stupid, that's not what it is. Just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just melodramatic romance. I'm like, I don't like this. I like contemporary romance sometimes. It's got to be the right premise, it's got to be the right setting, it's got to be tropes that I like. I don't read a tremendous amount of contemporary romance. I don't read a lot of romance, like specifically romance. I like my romance kind of on the side with a little bit of mixed in. Like ACOTAR, okay? That, to me, that was the perfect blend of fantasy and romance. There was this plot, the main character had motivation that was not romantic at all, but romance was happening in amongst the plot. And if you took out the romance, you would still have a book. It wouldn't be as good, but it's there. And if you took out, like, the fantasy plot, the book would fall apart. That's romantic fantasy. I like romantic fantasy. And I'm getting very irritated when people keep recommending romantic fantasies to me, and then I get in there and it's a straight up fantasy romance. And then on like the flip side, I keep seeing people like when they have like lists on like social media and they'll like my favorite romantasies and they'll include books like The Cruel Prince, for example. That is not a romantasy. That is not even close to a romantasy. There is like a romantic subplot that is very teeny tiny within the series. And I don't get me wrong, I love that series. It was really good. Highly recommended if you want fantasy first with the itty bitty bit of romance. But it's not romantasy. Like there was one TikToker who was doing this romantasy list, and they included Blood Over Brighthaven. If you've ever read that book, you would know that it is not a romantasy in any shape or form. It's not even close. It doesn't have romance in it. Well, it does a teeny tiny bit, but if you took it out, the book would still stand on its own. The book is fantastic, by the way. It was one of my favorite books that I read, I think last year. One of these past years. It was one of my favorite books, but it's not a romantasy. Do not go into that book expecting romance. You will be very, very disappointed. But no, that's my rant aimed at romantasy specifically. And I'm getting really tired of encountering these books that have this big promise and like the blurb or the marketing that a sweeping fantasy, and then you get in and it's just this very poorly veiled romantic romance against a fantasy backdrop. And but they still do that thing. I've encountered several that still do this weird thing where they treat it like a fantasy, where they have paragraphs of exposition and world building. And I'm like, you don't need any of this. You don't need all of this. Like, there's been several that I've read that have been okay. And they do that thing in romantasy that absolutely grinds my gears. It infuriates me. Where book one, solid. And then they do the thing in the first part of book two where the couple that spent the entirety of book one getting together and falling in love, well, they just can't be together for some stupid reason. And that is the entirety of book two, is them being, we just can't be together. Oh no. I've read so many of these book twos where I've started to read book two. I have DNF'd a lot of book twos in the past year where the reason they can't be together is either a miscommunication, which one of the tropes that I hate the absolute most. I will stop reading books if this is the case because it's stupid. Or like just some reason, like for some reason the main two characters get into a fight that's not really a fight, but like there's some misunderstanding and they just have this dramatic fight that's really out of character for both of them. Like if they would just sit down and talk to each other, it wouldn't have happened. The entirety plot would have been null and void. And it's just, to me, from my author standpoint, when I see like the miscommunication trope or like the weird forced fight like in act 1, my initial thinking is you just don't have another plot point to like break them up. There's nothing else that you can think of. To me, it's just uncreative and unimaginative. Watch me do that in my next book unintentionally. And I love fantasy. Fantasy is my first love in the bookish space. But I'm getting so tired of encountering these books that have these big promises, and then you get in and it just falls apart. Like either the main character is just this cardboard cutout copy and paste of like a main character from Throne of Glass, whatever her name was. I can't think of it right now. It's going to come to me about 10 minutes. Or as soon as I hit stop recording is usually when that happens. Or the main love interest is just a poorly copy and pasted Rysand. It's Rysand, right? See, I pronounced it Rysand because I had never encountered that name before. Apparently that's wrong, but that's how it is in my brain, and it's very hard to correct. So it's just, don't worry about it. Or I keep finding these books that the plot is so weak and watery, and yet it's cobbled together with these overdone tropes that when you get to it, it just doesn't have any emotion behind it because it just feels like they asked AI to write fan fiction of Akatar. That's what it feels like. And it's just kind of why this rant exists is because I've been trying to find like those romantic fantasy books, those romantic fantasy series like Throne of Glass to help me get in the mood to finish my high fantasy series. And it's just trying to find them is hard because it's either the Romantasy series where they get together in book one and then book two they for some reason fight in the first act and then the rest of the book is trying to piece together the watery world building from book one because it didn't really exist. Like I have a couple series that I've encountered that are really good. Overall, it's frustrating because I don't like DNFing books. I don't like pulling a book off the shelf that I have already purchased, that I've owned for a while and getting in, and it's just eh. And another thing I thought I had in regards to all of the books that I have DNF'd, like this weird romantasy genre that has a lot of gray area in it. There's this thing that I keep encountering where the books they read like young adult fantasy, as in the main character's motivation, the love interest, how the main characters just react to things, how their thought process works, the decisions that they make, like how the story is written, kind of in that sense, feels very young adult. I keep encountering these main characters who make these very immature and rash, stupid decisions and it feels like they're being like forced into that because the author doesn't know how to get them to point A to point B without it. And there is a difference between making your main character stubborn and making them a strong character. Stubbornness does not equal strength. Recklessness does not equal strength. I keep encountering these main characters, specifically main female characters, who are just stubborn and hard-headed, and they're very hard to like because they just come across as prejudice and very set in their ways and they're right and everyone else is wrong. And it's hard to get into that character. I mean, I like a character with, traits, but I also want to see them like with traits that I know as a reader that they are going to evolve as the story progresses and change and encounter new ideas and take those new ideas and learn and become a better person or a different person than they were at the beginning. If you have any recommendations for good fantasy series with romantic subplots, feel free to drop those in my comments. I am always taking book recommendations, especially for that Throne of Glass-esque kind of vibe where like there's a plot and it's the main plot and there's romance happening because of the plot, like kind of in the background. And there's been several series that have been recommended to me that were supposed to be, kind of give that Throne of Glass vibe, and I've gotten in, and like there was one that I specifically remember where book one was eh, and then book two did the whole we can't be together thing, and then you spend this entire book two trying to get them back together, and it's just by the time I got to the end of book two, I did not care about the plot twist. And I did not care about book three. I did not want to read any more of that series because it was more fantasy romance than it was fantasy. There was so much romance happening, and so much of the plot revolved around this character and her relationship with this guy, and it was just there's very little plot happening. And it's very annoying. Which, again, there's nothing wrong. If you like fantasy romance, if that's your vibe, great. It's just not for me. I'm not saying you can't like that kind of book or that you're wrong for liking that kind of book, or if you like the stubborn, reckless protagonist, and how dare I say that, it's fine. You can like what you want. This is me. This is all about me. This is my vlog. These are my thoughts. I DNF'd another book last night. This is why I'm kind of irritated. Because I finished one, started another one, got maybe 10% in, and I was like, this is not for me. And of course, now that I've opened that book, Kindle Unlimited is like, hey, we got all these books that are very similar to this book you just read. And I'm like, no, I don't like that book. How do I tell you that I didn't like that book without it being like publicly on my Goodreads thing? Because I don't like leaving bad reviews of books as an author myself. I feel like that's just, it's bad mojo, it's unprofessional, it's inviting negative mojo into the author space, and I don't want to do that. If I don't like a fellow author's book, you will never know about it. It will not appear in my Goodreads. It hopefully will never pop up on my currently reading list, because like I have it set to where my Kindle doesn't automatically put it up there if I like download it. I have to physically put it in there because I just bad mojo. Because if you DNF my book, don't tell me about it. I don't need to know. It's fine. I understand. But it still hurts a little bit. But I don't want to do that to other authors. Because, like, I am a little further in my mindset of my career where, like, if someone DNFs my book or they leave me a 1-star review, it's not going to hurt me that much. I'm like, oh, well, okay. And I'll move on very quickly. But just in case the author that I, leave a 1-star review for is not in that mind space and they are very fragile and they've had like the worst day possible. All these bad things have happened in this week, and then they get home and there's a 1-star review and that's the 13th reason. I don't want to do that. I know that's a worst case scenario, but I don't want to invite that mojo. So this has been my rant. It says 20 minutes. I don't think I was speaking for the entirety of that 20 minutes. I think I walked away. I did walk away. I walked away to get coffee. I made coffee, set it, walked away. My coffee's ready, so I'm gonna go make my coffee, come back, play Minecraft, maybe work on book 5. Thank you for coming to my rant about Romantasy. Feel free to leave me book recommendations in the comments. I am always welcoming. Never say a word and then it doesn't sound like a real word. That just happened to me. Anyway, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope the next book you find is just mind-blowing, best book of 2026 kind of book, because that's kind of what I'm hoping for with the next book I download.